before we start. So those who want to grab a cup of coffee or tea can do that just before we start. Deputy Minister, good morning.
Morning, greeting you.
Thank you very much.
I see is also here.
Who?
Advocate Skosana.
Deputy Minister, good morning.
Yeah. Morning.
Good morning to you, sir.
He was here very early. By 8:20, he was already here.
Yes, Chair, if you're going to have your day in court, you better be in court.
No, this is a very friendly court. It's 9 o'clock. Good morning, honorable members. Good morning to everyone, and thank you for gracing this meeting. Today we'll be dealing with the supplementary budgets of the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development and the National Prosecuting Authority in terms of Section 12 of the Money Bills, Amendment Procedures and Related Matters Act of 2009. The department is led by the Deputy Minister, Honorable John Jeffries. The Minister is attending Cabinet. Thank you very much, Honorable John Jeffrey and your team. I have not seen the NPA in this platform. I'm not sure. Oh, here's Advocate Shamila Batoy. Good morning to you, Advocate Batoy. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I will now hand over to the Deputy Minister, who's the leader of the delegation, to make his opening remarks. And then I will hand over to, I think after him, it will be the acting DG, Advocate Skosana. I appeal that presentation should not be more than 30 minutes. We have a sitting at 2, and we were informed that at least members must start registering by 1 o'clock. Over to you, Honorable John Jeffrey.
Chair, thanks very much. I'm really just accompanying the department, so I would be handing over to the acting DDG. Obviously, just to say these are difficult times, with particularly for the courts, with as soon as there's a positive case recorded, then expectations that there will be deep cleaning and closures of the courts, which obviously disrupts the business of the courts. So that's the background I think that everybody knows that we are working with, and within that reality we've got to do the best we can to keep access to justice and the administration of justice functioning. But I'll hand over then to Advocate Skosana.
Thank you. Before Advocate Skosana, I think we are joined by Advocate Mthunzi Manga. Am I correct?
That is correct, Chair.
Yes,
Advocate,
Chair.
Yes, Advocate Manga, on behalf of the committee, would like to congratulate you on your appointment as a special advisor to the National Director of Public Prosecution. And welcome to the meeting.
Thank you very much.
Hey, is somebody who's making noise? Can we all mute our mics? So I know Advocate Mthunzi, you were once in this family, in the NPA. You are back again. So we're excited to have you back. And there is no place like justice. All of us leave and then we come back, we end up here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Advocate Skosana.
Thank you. Yeah, let's share the presentation. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. We will basically share the presentation on the screen. But whilst, because we basically wanted to be guided by the Chairperson, how would you want, whether we want to go through all the slides, but whilst we are projecting the presentation, let me take this opportunity to welcome the opportunity and to indicate that I'm joined by the EXCO members so that they can basically assist me in the presentation. It's coming on the screen. Yeah. Yes, we're sharing the screen. But how it's going to, we thought we were going to unfold the Honorable Chair is that I will basically share the presentation with the acting CFO, Mr. Nhlanhla Mthembu. He's the acting CFO for a week because we have had an unfortunate development last week when the acting CFO, Mr. Joan Johnson, lost her mother in the Western Cape, and he had to leave to go and bury her mother. And he's back on the, it's on the platform now, but he's still in self-isolation. But obviously he'll be able to assist to the extent that it's required for him to make input. But Mr. Mthembu is here, and then he'll be able to take us through the processes. Now,
Honorable Advocate Skosana, I think before you proceed, I think on behalf of the committee, we would like to extend our deepest condolences to Mr. Johnson. Losing a mother is not a small thing, and we are with you in our prayers, and may you be strong during this time. We know that it will take time, but as this family, we wish you strength that you overcome this grief. You may proceed, Advocate Skosana.
Thank you, Chair. We've just flattered the presentation, which I hope that honorable members are able to see on the screen. Thank you, Chair. I'm going to basically give the first, and then in terms of coming to figures, I'll be assisted by Mr. Mthembu. I must say, Chair, that we finalized the presentation over the weekend, and because of Mr. Johnson's very so that we are able to work through the figures with, but also to indicate that we are, as the committees are aware, that I didn't report that 4 of our senior managers, including the CFO, are basically subjected to disciplinary inquiries. I must just say in passing that the disciplinary inquiries have started, hearings have started, and we hope to complete those processes in a month's time. I've said that there's no get stability in the justice environment, especially in the budget space. They're better for all of us, etc. So I think, and I thought I must just make that as an open statement. Chair, the first 4 slides basically provide the narrative, the background to the budget proposal process. I must say, Chair, that we were very fortunate in that we were not hit by the storm we have anticipated. members. Initially, when discussions went to 3 billion, and there have been a lot of behind-the-scene engagement with National Treasury, both at the official level as well as a level of the minister and the cabinet. And I think we are very pleased to announce that the initial cut has basically been reduced to 416 million. So it's even less than the 500 million, which basically enable us to continue with our work and also to put in place a very sustainable business continuity measures in place to make sure that costs don't collapse. And this came from the very basic principle that during this time of the devastation, obviously, you have to keep your costs up and running. You have to make sure that services such as the master services are up and running, maintenance services, all those services which are both central to access to justice, but also are central to sustaining livelihoods of persons from the constitutional perspective are retained. So I thought I must indicate that from the beginning. So the presentation talks to 416 and how we absorb that, and I think the figures will come into space whilst when Mr. Mthembu come to that. What we are doing, we are continuing to fill the fiscal positions, because part of sustaining our businesses is to ensure that we've got a capable and a very strong management capacity to steer the department through this crisis. And therefore, you can see from the slide that 49 posts of senior managers, which will cost us 59 million, will still continue to be filled, and also we still have to divert some of the amounts to support the current measures in terms of the department's risk-adjusted plan. Deputy Minister alluded to one of the biggest challenges that we are basically experiencing new spending drivers in the management of the pandemic. The process of cleaning incentives in the courts are basically putting a lot of strain on the budget. The whole issue of getting the PPE whatever, put a lot of things into that measures, and it's led by Ms. Emily Mlangeni. She's in the meeting. She manages the whole manages the risk-adjusted plan in terms of making sure that the colleagues, employees, and members of the public get infected in the court space, in the offices of the department, they get basically managed through that plan, but make sure that even all the cost requirements that come from this process are being managed as we move forward, etc. And I thought I must make that point up front, etc. What we have developed protocols, which will then be managed in terms of this process. That protocol seeks to guide us when and how. Yesterday, honorable members, we said through EXCO, and I think we've refined the protocol. And I can just share a few pointers as an introductory remarks. One, we agree that we need to classify our infrastructure in 3 categories. One, the highly sensitive, highly and that short period of time, it means that we must happen within few hours. Offices which basically are not so critical, like the management offices where the additional services can still be rendered from home, whatever, in those areas. Because you are low risk areas, there won't be much activity or much kind of prejudice if that. So I thought I must share with the committee, because what we intend doing is that based on that risk-adjusted plan, we then want to sell it to the entities within the justice environment, so that we are able to share these costs, these new costs, which are coming to be our new normal. So we were able to manage. I think our national office momentum was closed twice in the space of 2 weeks. And when we wanted to get quotations, we were getting a huge cost quotations for us to do deep cleaning, whatever. And I thought it was important that we develop a strategy to manage those costs. So the money
Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm not sure if I'm the only one that's losing Advocate Skosana from time to time.
Yes, I think we all have that problem.
Sustain services.
There seems to be a connection problem on your side. We can't hear you properly. The last time I heard you, we were talking about the deep cleaning that is exorbitant in cleaning your offices, and then after that, it was very difficult to understand what you were saying.
Okay, Chair. I'm with the IT people who provide support in the boardroom, and I think I've alerted them that trying to see what the connection system is. And I just wanted to confirm with you, Chair, is the presentation on the screen?
Yes, it is.
Okay. They're trying to look into it, and I'll just repeat some of the things, Chair. And I hope that whilst they're working on the one side, I was just on the slide number 4, where I was basically explaining which is part of the background, that part of our business continuity measures. One is to make sure that we sustain the costs, don't keep them closed for long, and that we categorize our buildings in terms of the level of priorities, and that in respect of the courts, we are putting in place measures that will ensure that if there are any infections experienced in the court, we must expedite the process of deep cleaning and contamination, not more than a day for a court. That is the day of the deep cleaning, and probably so that the following day can open. Those which are medium risk areas, like the national office, because we are giving them the tools to work from home. Then there are low priority areas where there's very little prejudice, where the deep cleaning, whatever, can take a longer time. So I thought that process, I was at the point where I said, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, we wanted that protocol is developed in consultation, in conjunction with all the stakeholders in the justice sector, so that we can all join into it. So we've got one kind of framework that manages us, so that we are not going to have running costs which are going basically to deplete our budget, which is intended for service delivery. Then it be ended up taking care of these processes. And then the second point, which is on the slide now, which is very central to the business continuity measures, is the whole investment into the ICT and IJS environment. And Chair, we have put in place here that COVID-19 have shown the extent to which our modernization and digitization have lagged behind. And we have now prioritized those projects. That's why I hope that IJS has not been touched from the budget cuts. And therefore, the 853 million for the IJS will still continue to be used in the system, as well as the ICJS. So we are able to continue with those plans we've put aside to sustain those processes. Part of them is, one, to the extent to which we are going to facilitate opportunities to have virtual trials, of the audio-visual link. Deputy Minister, yesterday, there was also a suggestion that we need to expand the audio-visual link between the courts and the Tuzela care centers, so that it goes off again. So that victims of the gender-based violence and sexual offences can basically testify from the camp of the Tuzela Care Center. So those are part of the measures we are putting in place in terms of funding. and those who are articulated in the 4 slides I've prepared. Now, up to slide number 4, I'm going to ask that the acting CFO, Mr. Mthembu, take us through the figures so that at least can highlight some of the critical figures, and also to emphasize, Honorable Chair, that we're very pleased that only not all the entities in the justice sector were experienced budget cuts, and those budget cuts are only absorbed mainly within the compensation of employees, and that process is basically informed by the fact that because there's been a delay in the appointment of staff, whatever, the savings we've experienced since the 1st of April until now in terms of appointment of staff will then assist in offsetting some of the budget cuts. The second opportunity is that through the lockdowns and the reduced capacity in the courts, we have basically saved a huge amounts from the traveling costs and accommodation. The closure of the hotels, the closure of the airlines, etc., have helped us to save some costs. So those are the goods and services allocations, which we are hopeful that they are going to make a serious dent in terms of alleviating the 416 cut which have been imposed on the department, and that we are not going to be forced to operate basically with a much more reduced staff. But when we look at the staff, we are sustaining those services where people are required. So in terms of the courts, we make this the prosecution, the interpreters, the magistrates, whatever, those people will make sure that those services which have been proclaimed by the minister in terms of directions for alert level 3, they continue to be sustained in the courts. And we try to offset the budget cuts against the savings we have yielded since the posts have been held up, and also in view of the goods and services reductions which I've just mentioned. I want Mr. Mthembu to focus on the key figures and just be coming here just to take us through the slides so that we can do that. And yeah, you can speak. Just move on. I must also say that Mr. Mthembu is and therefore I'll be asking to this process so that we have an interruption in terms of the space of the movement of the slides and I ask that members of the committee bear with us.
Thank you, Acting DG. Good morning, Chair. Committee members.
Mr. Mthembu, you have 15 minutes. The acting DG has exhausted the other 15 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I just want to highlight this one. That in terms of the figure about 98%, I'm not going to show the slide. I mean, it's 95% with an underspending of about 759 million. And most of the underspending was coming from compensation of employees, budget, both magistrate salaries, and the department with over 400 million. The balance is coming from our payment for capital assets. With regards to our expenditure performance up until the end of May, the department's total expenditure amounted to about 12%, and obviously this is attributable to our COVID-19 lockdown.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry for interrupting. Wilma here. Sorry for interrupting, Chair.
Honorable Dragans.
Okay. Sorry, Chair. I'm wondering if the department is aware that the presentation is not on. There's no slides. Is the department aware of that?
I think the acting DG said that they're working on it to ensure that we have slides. They're working on it.
Thanks, Chair. I've just put slide 15 on the screen. I hope it is visible. It is the slide which Mr. Mthembu is referring to. As I've indicated, he'll tell me the slide number. I'll move this side because he can't move the computer because of his condition. And then I'll ask him just to indicate slide number so I can move from my side. So now it's on slide 15. I hope it's there. Yes.
It's not there.
Oh.
It doesn't want to share. It's reflecting here. It doesn't want to share.
Yeah, Chair, the system does not want to share the slide. It's sharing only on my.
In terms of,
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Now we can see the slide.
Okay. Now, in terms of
sorry, Mr. Chair, I can't see the slide at all. Perhaps I'm the only one.
What about other members?
We could see it.
We could see it, Chair.
Okay, we'll just go on. I'm fine. I'll follow on the one that was sent to me. It's no problem.
IT, can you assist Honorable Breitenbach?
We don't see it anymore, Chair. I don't know if that's just me.
Yes, the slide has disappeared.
Seems to be coming on and off. It's now off.
I think, honorable members, the presentations were circulated to us. I think we have gone through the presentations. Can we allow them to proceed? Because we don't know how much will that take. Honorable Drachans? Honorable Drachans? Proceed, Advocate Skosana.
Okay, thanks, Chair. In terms of slide 15 is basically showing how much was initially anticipated to be the cut, 2.2 billion, and finally how much was eventually cut. And okay. And finally, how much was cut and the split between the department, NPA, and entities. And you can see that most of the cuts in terms of the final cut were directed towards compensation of employees, and a little bit of the cut from machinery and equipment, and about 33 million was then cut from entities. Next slide, Chair. The following slide, Chairperson. No. Following slide, that's next. Yeah, the following slide, which will be in slide number 16, is basically showing how these allocations are spread amongst the entities of the department, NPA, and the department itself. Next slide. Now, this slide is basically trying to say initially, the department was anticipated to be cut by 1.7 billion, but the final cut was 416 million. And this implies that we have savings of about 1.3 billion that we saved from being cut. But as part of our negotiations with National Treasury, we had already indicated to them to say we have a budget estimated. We are estimating 334 million for us to be able to fund this imaging expenditure relating to COVID-19. And then we said to Treasury as part of negotiation was that we are prepared as a department to absorb the 34 million.
Point of order, Chairperson. We can't hear the
Okay.
That's correct, Honorable Ndlozi. We are just struggling to hear them.
Oh. Chair, am I audible?
Yes,
Yeah,
can you repeat the last three sentences?
Okay.
Advocate Batoy?
Yeah, I do know this is a public hearing and you do prefer the videos on, but I was wondering if it might not be in the interest of a better sound quality, that they perhaps switch their video off and try, if it's okay with you, Chair, just a proposal.
For all members and invited.
No, just for the
yes.
just for the presenter, Chair, at the moment. Just for the
Yes.
Department of Justice, it may be a problem just on their side with the bandwidth or connectivity. It's just a suggestion, Chair.
Yes, thank you very much. Can we all try and switch off our videos? Maybe it will assist with the bandwidth, and then so that at least the department can present, and we can open it after we can open our videos after they've presented. Can you proceed?
We are okay for that, Chair.
Okay. Chair, we're on slide number 17. This slide is basically saying we have got savings of about 984 million that could be reallocated to the other priorities of the department, given the fact that we have been cut far less than what we had anticipated. But this 984 million is already including the 334 million that you are saying that we would be allocating for COVID-19 related expenditure. The following slide is basically giving us a breakdown of what is involved in this 334 million. The next slide. Chair, this
Chairperson.
Advocate Kosana
is basically showing us the
Yes, Honorable Chair.
I think the problem is getting worse, and I'm afraid that there'll be a lot of interventions because people can't hear. I would ask from the honorable members if we can allow the NPA to present as they are busy fixing the DoJ is busy fixing the IT related problems, because sometimes it's very difficult for us to follow the presentation because some of the critical issues we can't hear what is the presenter saying because of these IT problems. So I think let's give them sufficient time to deal with those IT issues and invite the NPA to present. How is that, honorable members?
That's fine. I'm quite happy.
Yes, it's fine, Chair.
We okay with that? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, honorable members, for your understanding. Advocate Batoy, can you do the NPA's presentation? And Justice, please look at your IT problems.
Thank you, Chair. We are doing so. We are moving from the department land and we'll use our systems to see whether it can pick better. Thanks, Chair, for the opportunity. We apologize for the disruption.
No, that's fine. Advocate Batoy?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, just for the department, it seemed like the department in their presentation didn't switch off their video. So I thought that might have actually helped with their presentation and sound quality. But be that as it may, Chair, we did send a presentation to the committee. And we were unclear whether the NPA would be required to present, but we do have a presentation and we are ready to present, Chair.
No, I think continue presenting, Advocate Batoy. You have 30 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. We'll be much shorter than that, Chair. The presentation is on the screen. Chair, can you please confirm that it's visible to everyone?
Yes, it is visible.
It's not visible to me.
I think Honourable Breitenbach must sort out her bandwidth, Chair.
My bandwidth is just fine, but I'll follow on my tablet. It's not a problem.
Okay, thanks. But I think IT, can you ensure that Advocate Breitenbach is able to see the presentation, because we don't know what is the problem. Okay, thanks. You can continue, Advocate Batoy.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. We did send the presentation to the committee as well, so hopefully Honourable Breitenbach at least has an electronic or hard version of the presentation. Thank you, Chair. Chair, as was indicated by the acting DG, we had expected that there will be a need to reprioritize issues in the light of possible budget cuts to government departments. We were actually, in a sense, fortunate because we had, as the acting DG indicated, and the acting CFO, there was a saving of 150 million in our compensation budget. And as a result of the challenges, I should say, with speedy recruitment, as well as the loss of staff by retirement or resignation in the period. So this amount was actually handed back to the government, and we didn't suffer any further budget cuts. We had already, in anticipation of possible cuts, we had planned that we would recruit less aspirant prosecutors in the event that we did suffer those cuts. We expect, however, that we may still, at this stage, be able to recruit more than the 200 that we thought we may have to cut by. So that is a positive aspect. We've actually, so besides the 150 million, there hasn't been budget cuts. So there hasn't been, which we actually volunteered. There hasn't been any need for the NPA besides the 150 million to change. There hasn't been annual performance plan. So those are broadly, we are still recruitment still remains a top priority for the NPA. So does capacitation in terms of annual skills, training and development. Those are broadly. We are still particularly in the area of highly complex specialized commercial crime. But those are just my preliminary introductory over to Advocate Karen van Wijn's highly active administration, as well as Hanika van Zyl, my acting CFO, and between them, I believe that it's Hanika van Zyl who will actually do the presentation. Hanika, are you online?
Yes, NDPP. Okay, I'll take you through the budget part. So the next slide, let me just, okay, next slide. Now the budget presentation doesn't want to move. Okay. Oh, and now it's at the end.
Okay, let's try this.
Let me just do it again. No, it doesn't want to. Show that.
Okay, see, Marty's come on there. Marty, do you want to see if yours will move?
Yeah, Marty is back up. Okay, I don't know whether the presentation is on. It's now on my side.
Yes, we can see it. I certainly can. Hanika, please go ahead.
Okay,
Hopefully,
thank you.
honorable members can also see it.
Okay, thank you. The first budget slide, this is a view of our budget versus expenditure for the previous financial year, the 2019-20, where the Department of Justice has already touched a little bit on this. This is where we've got a saving at the end of the financial year of 125 million. Now, this amount relates to 62 million of the amount relates to compensation of employee, where we didn't fill all the positions and we didn't do the recruitment. The money also was received during the adjusted estimate budget process, which we received very late during the year. And another 62 relates to machinery and equipment. This was laptops that the NPA procured in the previous financial year, but due to the COVID, we couldn't receive and pay the laptops in the previous financial year. We've only received and paid in the current financial year. The next slide, now we doesn't want to move to the next slide. Maybe I'm too... Okay,
Karen, can someone assist?
My slides doesn't want to move. Marty?
Honorable Chair, we apologize for this. This is the challenges with technology.
Yeah. I think Marty must try and share it because mine doesn't want to move on. It gets stuck.
Marty, I know you're online. Can you please try to assist and share your version?
I will, Chair. I think, apologies, Chair and NDPP. I think there's a slight delay. I'm going to share now with you.
Chair, in the meantime, can I continue as everybody? I don't know whether everybody's got the hard copies.
Yeah, we do.
Yes, we do. We do have the hard copies.
There we go. There we go. Okay. Next slide, Matito. Okay. The next one, Marty. Yeah. This is also, yeah. Okay. This slide, yeah. The previous two slides only relate to the prior financial year, where the split is per economic classification and per SIP program. This slide is just an indication of the 150 million cut, how it will affect the various SIP programs within the NPA. And here you will see the bulk of the cut will go to the NPS, which is the biggest part of the NPA's budget. The 150 million will come from their budget allocation. Assets forfeited will be 20 million and then 15 million on support services. Now, support services, the amount is very small in support services because in support services, we don't have a big compensation budget, but we've got our centralized goods and services budget within support services. And all these cuts, as already mentioned, only relates to compensation of employees. The next slide is an indication of our current spend on where we are now. If you look at this percentage-wise, we have spent almost 24% linear against the 25% spent as at the end of June. And then we've added a projection, and on the projection you will see that although the 150 is already removed from this presentation, we still have a saving of 75 million in compensation of employees. So the NDPP has established a special task team on the recruitment. So we're driving the recruitment to ensure that we spend this money in the current financial year. Then on machinery and equipment, the overspend of 140 million. This is, as I've already mentioned, the laptops that we've procured in the prior year that was paid in this financial year. But we've already had the discussions with the Department of Justice, so we will environment between us and them at the end of the financial year. The next slide is a breakdown of our COVID expenditure as at the end of June, what we've already spent on COVID. This amounts to 1.7 million. And this is for the PPPs and for decontamination of our buildings. Now, the decontamination was very low as when we did this projection, and that is only now starting to show big increases because this is now happening on a more frequent basis. The next slide is just to show the impact of the 150 against our MTF budget allocation. And in that slide, you will see that our MTF growth is still 8.37, which is still a big growth for the NPA. Due to our additional funding that we did receive during the MTF period. So the 150 will only affect this current year and will not impact, as the NPA said, on our performance deliveries for the MTF period. The slide thereafter is also the MTF, but going breakdown per SIP program. Then the slide after that one is the NDP, the Department of Justice has indicated also in their presentation the budget that we are ring-fencing for COVID. So within the NPA area, we are putting 30 million aside that we are ring-fencing within our budget to cater for future expenditure for the pandemic. The 30 million will be spent on PPEs and decontamination. And the 30 million will be reprioritized within our current baseline, and it will mostly come from travel, subsistence and travel, as well as our fleet services, the fuel account, because it is anticipated that the prosecutors will not travel as in the past, and that we will make more use of virtual meetings and virtual ways of doing things in the NPA. And that's basically the end of the budget, the figure part. I don't know whether Corin wants to conclude the presentation. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Chair. Corin, do you have any points you'd like to bring to the attention of the committee?
No, I think NDPP, you were going to deal with the last aspect relating to, because I think that's the main question that the Portfolio Committee wants to know now, is the so what? So will this have an impact on our ability to deliver in terms of our APP? And as you know, we've been given extension to until the 9th to relook our APP if there is an impact. And I think that NDPP, if you want to address that, because I think that's the burning question right now for the Portfolio Committee.
Thank you, Corin. Honourable Chair, I alluded to this in my introductory comments. But perhaps before I deal with that, I should also say that the Investigating Directorate has not been affected by these cuts. So as I mentioned earlier, Honourable Chair, these cuts will not impact on our ability to deliver. And I think the one positive is that when we had been reporting last year with the very, very serious budgetary challenges that the NPA was facing, we had about 89% of our budget that was being spent on compensation, which left very little for the goods and services and other areas, for example, training and development. We are now at 81% of our budget, which is much more manageable, which means that we're able to, the plans that we have to capacitate the NPA will be significantly improved in that regard. So I think that is a positive aspect in that the proportion between our goods and services and the compensation budget is less than it was when we, or last year, should I say. In addition, Chair, we are as the DM mentioned in his opening, the impact on the courts has been significant, and it is increasing daily. We are having, various, court staff, whether it's prosecutors, magistrates, administrative staff, legal aid, that are being affected by COVID-19, and we have a task team in the NPA. And also we are engaging very, very closely with the Department of Justice and the DPSA, because this is not just affecting us, but the entire public service. We find that we are having to close down buildings more frequently, decontaminate. So, we do need, the costs are quite significant, and, in line with the projected scenarios, is going to, in all probabilities, increase. So we need to have, a clear plan, and also assistance, for example, from the other relevant government departments in terms of what is the best way to ensure that we are able to continue operations without putting staff members at risk. So that is an ongoing conversation with the Department of Justice, because we found, for example, in the VGM, we were forced to close within a week or so, twice. So those are challenges that we're facing moving forward. And so we are also with our, if you could please say on this, with our colleagues in the JCPS, looking at ways in which we could deliver on our objectives in the APC.
Next, please.
Thank you, Chair. So, Chair, we are looking because, as I mentioned when we presented our 5-year strategic plan, the NPA has taken a different approach this year in terms of trying to achieve objectives that are not just related to conviction rate, but also to making impact. That means we do have to work very, very closely with our colleagues. And so we're looking at common measures, joint measures together, primarily with the SAPS and the DPCI, but working also with SIU and FIC to make sure that we are able to achieve the goals that we've set in the APP. Chair, that is the presentation of the NPA, and we stand ready to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can we go back to Justice, Department of Justice, are you ready?
Thanks, Chair. And we've heard everything that the NPA presented, and we hope and trust this time will be better audible. We have changed the bandwidth. We've connected on the 3G. We've switched off the video, and I'm just putting the slide. I'm going to just deal with the slides which were not, where we started experiencing cuts, and I hope that the Chair were able to see the slides.
Yes, we are.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll take, and I think I'll just run quickly through them, and I thank for the opportunity that you gave for us to come and reboot. The slide there basically shows what we are putting aside, Chair, for the expenditure to cover for the COVID-19 budget pressures. You can see that much of the amount to the PPEs was 155 million. Then the next one under item 600 million, which is the deep cleaning services of all our service delivery points. Chair, we've just put this money. I've said initially that we're looking at different mechanisms. Courts with our high priority areas will then be deep cleaned at the quickest time, within the quickest turnaround time, because we don't want to further add to the backlogs that we are currently experiencing, whilst those other ones can basically take some time, etc. So there will be the kind of a change in terms of expenditure pattern. So this slide shows how we've divided that amount of 334 million over the rest of the financial year to basically ensure business continuity. The next slide shows how we are yielding those kind of savings to find the 334 million. I did indicate that we are taking money from subsistence, traveling allowance, fleet services, agent services, office accommodation, and building and other fixed structures. And the next slide shows the baseline representation, how those basically cuts are going to be basically informed by to be taken care, are going to influence our baseline aspects. I'm going to right is the slides. I'm moving my slides, and I think that they're moving slower from this side. The next budget, the next presentation, Chair, shows the budget adjustments impact on the departmental programs. Now, we have indicated that we have taken 334 million to take care of COVID-19, and which basically we are able to absorb within our budget and with the cuts. And now the 416, inclusive of the 334.065 million, which we have put aside for the COVID-19, then need to basically to be taken away from. It's going to impact, and this slide shows those programs. You can see, Chair, that in those programs, and the biggest cuts are in respect of court services, 198, and it's court services because it's the largest branch and also got the largest head count in terms of people. So even in terms of your personal expenditure, whatever, those are the greatest number of posts where you can still delay the filling of those posts, but manage to have a business continuity. Some of the branches are so small that if you take 5 people, it means the branch must close. So you can see that the next one, state legal services, 35 million, NPF, they've spoken about the 150 million, and then auxiliary services, 33 million, and that comes to that 416 million, which basically we are absorbing into our baseline. Now, Chair, there's something I must explain. The ran out of its budget, investigative budget. The head of the investigation said, look, I've got no cent to continue. I'm closing down. They said they wanted 42 million to sustain their programs. We then were able, within the cost service budget, on that 150 million of indicated state capture, we're able to move 30 million from the build from the infrastructure to give them an amount that should sustain investigations. I've wrote a strong letter to them and said, everybody is reprioritizing their budget. They need to find ways of making sure that they live within that. So we gave them 150 million for this financial year. They came back and said they can't cover 150 million. They wanted 42 million extra. We only gave them an extra 30 million, which means their budget for the rest of this financial year for them to complete their work is 180 million. And I've said to them, they need to live with what we've given them. They need to reprioritize, and they need to adopt some of the measures we're adopting, so that if it needs to, for them to look into virtual platforms and reduce the hearings, if they need to take that approach. In that way, they'll also minimize the spread of the virus, even in terms of their own space, etc. The next budget basically shows how the cuts are being absorbed in terms of the classification. You can see 261 million is from compensation of employees, goods and services from 33 million, and payment transfers and subsidies and for capital assets is 122. All that then come to the 416, and as I've said, it's inclusive of both ourselves, the NPA and the NPA, and that small budget that I think is attributed to the SIU. The next slide shows the summary of each programs, how it will look like after the cuts. The next slide is the of the programs in terms of each program. So there's the breakdown of the slides I've indicated. Chair, as I'm going towards the close. Yes. Now, Chair, as we conclude, I think NDPP have mentioned the point. We are taking the opportunity to to work together with all the entities within the emerging spending pressures from COVID-19, and the biggest one of which is the deep cleaning. Now,
Advocate Kosana. Advocate
yes, Chair,
Kosana.
I'm still there.
Can you repeat your conclusion? I could not hear your first part.
Okay, my apologies, Chair. My apologies, I repeat.
Sorry?
My apologies, Chair. Thank you. I'm saying that, as the NDP have said, working together with the other partners in the justice sector will help us jointly manage. God bless, Chair. It will help us working together with the NPA, with the OCJ, with the SIU, with the legal aid, will help us pull together in view of the COVID-19. Now, I've said, Chair, it's important to shift much of the budget. Those are the ones which are geared towards enhancing our IT and modernization, because those who are going to need them beyond COVID. So if we're going to develop new online applications for maintenance, if we're going to develop new video link for data centers and for the AVR, if we're going to develop new measures services in the courts, all those are measures that we're going to sustain beyond COVID-19. So I've said to colleagues, it's important that we put the bulk of the budget on the legacy projects, which are going to basically change our space, than put enough money on paying for consumables for short-term outcomes like deep cleaning, whatever, which after a year also will have forgotten about what we spent. But I think including the state capture, I think the state capture must round off so that the NPA can take over those measures. I must say that there's process underway, basically, which the NDP and the minister facilitated in terms of the sharing of information, including the equipment that we have invested in the commissions, so that we can take those, the NPA and the law enforcement agencies can take over those investments as part of the legacy project moving forward. So, Chair, we will basically appreciate. We'll appreciate if the committee can basically further advise in terms of our approach in terms in the budget adjustment processes and areas we are basically prioritizing. And in the plan, revised APP, we are submit to the clear areas of the legacy project. The first one is we are moving towards getting online maintenance services so that people don't need to come to court to come and apply for maintenance. They can upload their applications, fill their forms, submit their pay slips and everything. They only come to court for a date of hearing for them to get a judgment. Master services, we are developing online applications so that people can apply for executorship, letters of appointment from home. They only come to court to come and pick up the order of the court, etc. And all those are part of the legacy project. We say we're going to leverage from this money we're putting aside so that beyond COVID-19, we must say that we have changed our space. The third point, Chair, we are doing away with cash transactions. I see the networks. We are doing away with cash payments. I've said to colleagues, there is a tender which needs to cash in transit, and that tender money is deposited at the court. At times in Johannesburg court on a day they deposit 14,000. We pay the security company 40,000 to come and take 13,000 to go and bank at the bank. So we say instead of issuing a tender on cash in transit, we are buying speed points and we are telling people to pay bail either at the bank or pay by speed point. And we'll give them a sanitizer after they press their numbers. The money gets from the speed point to the bank, no cash in the court. So it's one of our legacy projects. Court fines, bail, maintenance, we want to make sure that the monies get kept where it's supposed to be kept. tellers are in the bank. We don't want to employ tellers in the courts. We want to employ people who are going to ensure that they deliver services, but those who handle monies, we must handle them differently. And COVID-19 create that opportunity, and we cannot leave the opportunity to slip out of our hands. Thanks, Chair. Those are basically the conclusions I wanted to share with the committee, and we are welcome to get further inputs and guidance and critique from the committee. And we apologize for the IT glitches. It's one of the areas we must improve, because this is going to be our life. We don't want costs to be postponed because the virtual trials get interrupted from time to time. And if we're not going to invest in these aspects, we are not going to get it. We are not going to win the day at the end of the day. Thanks, Chair, for the opportunity and the honorable members.
Thank you very much. I have the following members: Honorable Glenis Breitenbach, Honorable, let me check, Honorable Horn, followed by Honorable Swart, followed by Honorable Hisham Mohammed, Honorable Maseko Jele, and then the last one would be Honorable J.K. Mufokeng for now, in that order.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation, which has now miraculously appeared on my screen when I no longer need it. So are we asking questions to Justice and the NPA together, or are we doing them separately?
No, I think it's better to ask both of them.
Thank you very much. So for Mr. Skosana, I hear this last input of yours about maintenance and the Master's Office all becoming electronic and these electronic transactions, and it sounds too wonderful. Real 21st century stuff. So if that can be successfully implemented, how marvelous. But I need a little bit more detail about how you're going to actually do it, bearing in mind that the integrated criminal justice system has gone nowhere in 20 years. Why would you be able to implement these wonderful ideas if you can't get the integrated criminal justice system off the ground? I'd just like a little bit more detail there, please. Or is this also going to only happen in around 20 years? And then I'm sure my colleagues will cover other questions on those issues. I'm interested in the backlog. This is to either the Department of Justice or the NPA. The backlog has increased exponentially since 2019, and even more so between March 2020 and May 2020, thanks to the criminalization of the entire South African population as a result of the Disaster Management Act regulations. One of the plans to deal with this was extended court hours. How are these extended court hours going to be accommodated, bearing in mind the budget cuts and the appointment of personnel cuts? And then to the NPA specifically, there's a serious reduction of cases finalized as a result of COVID, and that's understandable. And the appointment of aspirant prosecutors has been moved down from 400 to 200. And you say you may be able to increase that 200, which is good news. But how are you going to deal with a reduction in cases finalized as a result of COVID? So again, the growing backlog, cut budget, unlikely extended court hours is going to fly. What are we going to be doing about this growing backlog? What are we going to be doing about, is there a plan in place? Because there's been a lot of talk about it, but is there a plan in place to deal with all of those people who were given notices to appear in court for stepping onto the beach or collecting their children from the beach or whatever? Are those matters being dealt with, and what is happening to the people who paid admission of guilt? Has a plan been put in place to deal with this issue? We can't have the entire population being criminalized because of regulations that are decidedly questionable. And then also, has the avenue of civil recovery of money stolen during state capture been fully explored? And while this doesn't require the intervention or the involvement of the police or the NPA or even the Criminal Justice Administration, is the NPA and or the Department of Justice advising other departments about this possibility of civil recovery of debt? The burden of proof is much lower. The special tribunal of the SIU could be used in this regard more optimally. Is this being explored, and what advice has been given in this regard? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Breitenbach. Honorable Horn.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, let me firstly say I was similarly a bit disturbed when at first the investment in ICT was linked to the integrated criminal justice system, but towards the end of Advocate Skosana's input regarding what he called the legacy projects, I think that input made a lot more sense. So it is to be welcomed that permanent AVR systems is seen as part of the spend now, the investment in ICT. But I would urge that the department similarly look into setting up the necessary systems to deal with first appearances and postponements in criminal courts and at the civil courts, applications and motions on a medium or long-term basis, so that the spending there also allows for a more seamless process on virtual platforms. And if COVID is going to be with us for a year and a half or 2 years to come, then that is obviously a need for now, given also the information as to how court buildings are shut down the moment there is somebody who tests positive. But that also can be a legacy project. So I would like to urge the department to consider that as well. Then, Chair, the other question to the Department of Justice is regarding the cut in respect of the court infrastructure spend to the amount of 122 million rand. And the worry here is that we come from a few years where there was an underspending in respect of maintenance and the upgrading of court infrastructure on the one hand, and then given the briefings we've had recently of the SIU, the situation is compounded by the fact that where there was projects undertaken, it's rarely completed in time, and then there is in certain instances literally a doubling in the spend that goes into court infrastructure. So I think we must ask for detail as to how this 122 million rand will be cut, from which projects is it to be cut? Is it in respect of new build programs? Is it in respect of maintenance and the upgrade of courts that has been identified? So further and specific details in that regard, I think, must be given to the committee. Then, Chair, to the NPA, I must firstly say that obviously to maintain frontline services, it makes sense to cut on the aspirant prosecutors program. But then if we take into consideration the analysis shared by the NDPP a while after she took office in respect of capacity and expertise within the NPA, and where the aspirant prosecutors program was billed as a critical component of fixing this over the medium term. I think we must ask what impact, not this year, because we hear that they say they will be able to fully implement their APP, but what knock-on effect, what ripple effect will it have on the ability to strengthen the prosecution services in the few years to come. if the number of aspirant prosecutors is now cut from 400 to 200, the NDPP might mention again of the impact of loss of staff due to resignations, retirements, some NPA officials moving to the magistracy. So I think it's good to hear that they will maintain what they have this year, but I think we must be informed as to what the knock-on effect in the years to come will be. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mohammed.
Swart. I thought it was Swart now, Chair.
Yes. Sorry, Honorable Swart. Honorable Swart.
I don't mind, but okay, thank you. I just thought the list you gave. Well, firstly, just to commend the acting DG, the news is far better than we expected, given what was initially indicated of what the reductions will be, and the cuts are far less and the savings, and I think the department has done relatively well under the circumstances to reprioritize and to make sure that services are being delivered. But I think what my colleagues have indicated is with what we've happened with the savings and the reduced court processes, obviously this has increased the backlogs. And that is something that both the NPA and of course court services will have to look at. And one of the issues relates to the reduction of the budget of court services. So the one question is, with the reduction on court services, will that reduce the ability to address the backlogs? Obviously that is a massive concern. Now, of course, to alleviate the backlogs, I'm going to ask the Deputy Minister if he can come in on the progress that has been made with what the committee indicated was draft legislation to address the prosecutions of the 230,000 people that were arrested under the disaster management regulations. The committee gave a deadline for the end of July, and possibly we could get an update on that, because that will obviously help alleviate the backlogs if we can look at that issue when it comes to looking at that issue relating to the sentences and for admissions of guilt, criminal records. As far as the NPA, I would like to touch on the issue that we've been raising from the ACDP for a long time, and that is the ability of civil recovery. And we appreciate the budget constraints, but just I think what you've done, the 28 bank accounts that were frozen on the UIF fraud is amazing under these conditions. Really well done there. But there's so much more to be done, and we appreciate that. Do these budget reductions give, or will you still be able to recover? And why it's so important is this issue came up with the National Treasury and will be debated this afternoon in Parliament, where National Treasury doesn't possibly appreciate that you're able, together with the SIU, National Prosecuting Authority, recover billions that are sitting overseas if you're given the resources. And so it's so important to be aware. You're surely aware of the SWIFT banking system, the civil courts in foreign jurisdictions, and the usage. Now, this is the key part, the usage of artificial intelligence applications when it comes to tracing banks across the world. Now, we're talking about IT. Surely that should be something to look into, the purchasing of artificial intelligence applications. They're currently in use in the private sector in South Africa to trace the progress of suspicious transfers from bank to bank. The Financial Intelligence Center would make use of that. It is key because we can have quick win situations. And foreign jurisdictions will want to help us because they understand a sovereign debt crisis is looming if we don't do something urgently. So I'm fully supportive. The President Ramaphosa said he will capacitate. The Minister of Finances has appreciated that, but in discussions last week, I don't think National Treasury had a full appreciation of what the justice system can do, what the National Prosecuting Authority, the Investigative Directorate, the SIU can together do with the special tribunals, even in international jurisdictions, to recover ill-gotten gains. And so I want to encourage you firstly, but just to also ask you, is there progress in that using the SWIFT banking systems across the world and the possibility maybe to look into a project of getting the artificial intelligence applications where one can recover those issues. Lastly, then, to the acting DG, the issue about the virtual trials, the virtual issues. You touched on that, given the challenges we're experiencing today. Is this something that is occurring in court settings where we're having challenges with virtual motions, whatever is being done, with a lack of sufficient IT capacity? The very last question is, how does the department look into the zero-based budgeting going forward that the Minister of Finance has indicated will be something that one will have to look at? And possibly you might give us an indication of how you are looking at to prepare for zero-based budgets in going forward. Thank you so much, Chairperson.
Thank you. Honorable Mohammed.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Let me firstly say to both the colleagues from NPA and Justice for a very good presentation and for trying very hard under very difficult, unknown circumstances. And I can see the work and lots of hours behind the scene that we don't see. Some of us would know what happens operationally. And this is well done, in fact, from looking at what's happening on at the courts on a daily basis. I can just want to assure colleagues here and members, this is very good work, because many of the managers are also affected, and suddenly you don't have the capacity out of the blue and you've got to sit yourself. So thank you for that. I want to just focus on the NPA quickly, on the adjustment budget as presented. The aspirant prosecutors, now we know that program, I don't know, when we say that's the first place we went to cut, I thought that's a concern, because we know that's empowering for young people. It's an entry to the access to justice, and understand that you're to half basically because of budget cuts. I thought you would go more on the smaller items and on the budget items in order to avoid a massive 50%. But nevertheless, my question on it would be, is there any outside attempt to find outside international funding for aspirant prosecutors? Because that's not an operational funding issue. It's a more empowerment, human development project, which is necessary. And I'm sure there would be a lot of interest in funding such a project. I know we had difficulties previously about international funding, but this is something which certainly would go well, because it's an empowerment training program, nothing to do with direct operation. So then on the travel and fleet saving, I just wanted to check, you spoke about NDPP, about coordination with the Department of Justice, just to make sure that there is also coordination on fleet supply. I know prosecutors travel sometimes mostly separately, but I think these times have now come where clerks, there's nothing wrong with a clerk and interpreters traveling with prosecutors, although some counsel may have a problem with that, I know, in trials. Then just on the decontamination, again, I hope there's coordination. The question is, and I'm sure Justice will answer, we know there's abuse with regard to contracts by outside parties when it comes to decontamination of buildings and office areas. And I think there should be a centrality of this operation itself for all the entities, and that is more to Justice, not just Justice or NPA, but also SIU and all the other entities. I'm sure it's been done. I just need a confirmation. And then lastly, on the NPA, I just want to check whether the witness fee, I didn't see that item, but that's probably under Justice currently. I just want to check, why is witness fees not transferred to NPA? And that's to Justice and to NPA. What would be the reason for that? I've been grappling with that one for many, many years. That's why I'm asking deliberately, what is it going to stay with Justice, and why? When I said to Mr. Rodney de Kock at the time, your witness in Diwani is a hopeless case, is going to be rejected. I can't spend £15,000 on him. that would be interfering with the prosecuting authority, right? And whether it's a wasteful expenditure at the end of the day when the court throws it out, the witness. But I think such decisions should be the NPA, in my view. Coming to my colleague in Justice, Acting DG, just on, I would say that top management is a priority in terms of filling the post, you're right. But cutting the ground too much, because court services are large, we need to be very careful. My view would be that we focus on middle management cutting. You see, the middle person is not critical, as you know, in terms of court operations. It's the top management to give strategic direction in policy directive and the people who really do the work in the court. So you may want to have a look at that. Maybe you did already. I didn't see it in the slides. Because there you can save quite a lot. That's just a personal view in terms of middle management, that we don't need many of them. And then just on auxiliary service or capital projects, I just wanted to check what is the cumulative amount of saving on capital projects which can be which helps the COVID-19 cuts. Just more or less an amount. I'm talking about that amount where building hasn't started at your level 1, 2, and 3 category of capital works. If I can just get an idea. And then second last, whether the IT infrastructure or contingency plan, what's the amount that the budget has for contingency? I'm referring to, for example, the incident of Mojapay, and suddenly you had to carve out resources to that effect. And then very last, virtual, the AVR, is there any plan with regard to spending some funds to a few high courts where judges have asked for it, or especially JPs, with regard to having AVR at their particular high court to that effect? Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Honorable Maseko Jele.
Thank you, Chairperson. And thank you very much for the departments for good presentations that we have just received this morning. Indeed, in echoing the work of, in fact, the words of Honorable Hisham, I just want to say I can say it's good work that and the effort that went through this presentation and the cutting and all that. Thank you very much. But I'm also interested in a few questions, Chairperson, here. For Advocate Skosana, I see that, in fact, I'm happy that we do, in our plans, we have planned for putting some, in fact, to starting work on issues of the reviewing of the old apartheid legislations. And I would like to see going forward, because these are the issues that I think that they need to be given priority, Advocate Skosana. And together with this one of establishment of a single judiciary system. Those ones, to me, are supposed to be on the agenda. They are very much important because they are going to assist us to realize the dream of one rainbow nation. As for now, we're still struggling to have that, and one dream to have a dream that one day, indeed, South Africa will be a one rainbow nation. So, but my question on this one will be, have you thought of getting a team maybe that will work on this, so that each time when you come, at least you give us a progress as to we are at this level, and then we have done 1, 2, 3, because these are one of the things that we would like to see before the end of this parliamentary period. So I just want to see if maybe have you thought of at least having a team that will daily work on this, on these issues that I've mentioned. But also I want to welcome your plan on the legacy and programs. They are very much encouraging. Especially, I was going to ask questions on the maintenance, but because of what you have presented, you have already answered me that there is work that is going to be happening, and indeed there will be a speed up on issues that will be taking place in terms of the orders and all those things. But I also want to hear the plans that you have on the master's office, because remember there were reports, and then we know that there were files missing, and also some of them were banned. I can't say deliberately or what, but something happened in those offices. I'm not sure, particularly in Johannesburg, if I'm not mistaken, but how are we going to recollect that information? Have you thought about that? How are we going to get the information that we might have missed coming out of those files? If you can just say something on that one. But lastly, I want to go to the NPA. I welcome the no-cut budget on the ID. I think my colleagues have already spoken in terms of how important that division is. But I want to find out, because we need a lot of resources that are sitting outside there, which were out of corruption. So we have emphasized that so much, Advocate Batoy, that we are leaving everything to you to assist us to make sure that COVID has just ravaged us so much, and also assisted us to get this potential from you guys of planning the way you have planned, even if it's bad, but something good came out of that. So we are expecting more out of your capability in terms of responding to these problems that came about or which were exposed by this COVID-19. But lastly, Advocate Batoy, I don't know if maybe you saw the breaking news this morning, very disturbing, that there is a top advocate by the name of Seth Ntai who has been moonlighting for government after he has been disbanded. I don't know, maybe you have a comment on that one. But Chairperson, for now, I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mfokeng.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. And I welcome the presentation by Advocate Batoy and your team, and Advocate Skosana. Chair, I want to say on the issue that was raised by Maseko Jele now about the advocate, I think it opens more to this matter that we can shelve it for some time, because one has been worried about those acting magistrates that are having also their practices. And you find people that are in their practices still go and appear in front of them. There's a lot into that. Maybe we can leave it for some time, but it actually goes to that issue. Chair, I want to check also on the issue of the budget cuts. I'm worried about the building and the fixed structures because of the challenges that we are still having of buildings that are not complete. And I think I raised it even sometime last year on the Mamelodi building. And I wish that at some stage we should get a presentation on what is going to happen, because the Mamelodi people are saying that building is a hive of criminal activities. And I don't think it can be right that we leave it in that way and say that something will happen. We should know after COVID-19, whatever dates and when are we going to be looking at this. One welcomes the challenges that you are having and the budgets, both NPA and actually the Department of Justice. But now I want to understand about the communication budget as estimated by, it's almost on 5 million on all that. And I'm asking myself that, are you now going to have the plan, especially the one in DoJ, that we should do things differently, that people cannot be coming to courts in numbers to protest? They have a right to protest, but you should have rules now on how you come there and do things as you give them permission. One becomes worried because we are going to be sitting with COVID-19 for some time and looking at what is happening at the courts, people going there unprotected and all that. We really need to be thinking about the going forward if we are serious on making sure that we don't want this COVID-19 to be staying with us for some time. The next part, it will be the issue that one is worried about, the extended court hours. I think Honorable Glenys Breitenbach raised it, and then you look at the budget cuts. Can you maybe explain to us what is going to happen, noting all the backlogs we discussed last time? And it goes the same to NPA, to say that they also, National Prosecution had a budget cut, and they only get a little funding for COVID-19. And you ask yourself, what is going to happen? Because all those challenges are hitting both. And we want to know all that is going to happen. I want to welcome the cashless process, Advocate Skosana. It's long overdue. But as we do it also with a plan of why are you doing it? You are doing it because you don't want the cash that you pay for collecting. We should also use it as a monitoring mechanism, because all those things with dirty money that is going to be coming from the banks, you'll be able to monitor now on that. Have that in mind, that it's not just going to be receiving money, it's also going to be monitoring. If somebody can pay a bail of 50 million or 10 million, where does it come? Example on those things. But I'm trying to say we need to be checking on things like this. Then going to the issue of the NPA, I think we need to really give them time, Chair, because I noted that there will be a quarterly performance report that will be coming on the 3rd of August. And one is looking forward to see what is going to happen and give them time to understand some of these things. At the same time, I am also worried about the slide 22 that is from the court services. And I wish that maybe we can get more onto that, because it goes back to what was raised by Advocate Breitenbach about the backlogs and all that extended time that is there. I'm worried about the violation of the regulations. We had a lot on that. The state capture is getting more money, is welcome, but we should understand on why did it get so much? What is it that we don't know that is coming? And the time that is given, is it more than what we know? It's actually something. Lastly, Chair, is on the issue of the Master's Office. This integrated process, we should get a plan on it. Advocate, I think Honorable Maseko and Honorable Glenys, they are correct to say that we need to know more into this, because we cannot just be happy that there's an integrated process. We need to get a plan on the presentation so that we can be able to go further in understanding. Chair, I want to leave it for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Newport Trachans.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you very much to all the presenters. I just have one question related to the Thuthuzela care centers. And I think I saw that it was briefly mentioned on one of the presentations about AVR. Does it mean that all the TCCs have AVR facilities equipment already? And if not all of them have the equipment, will the budget cuts affect affect gender-based violence interventions, and will it affect the AVRs being installed? Thank you very much, Chair.
No, thank you very much. I've got, I think, one or two questions. The first one is about...
You did not note my hand.
Oh, I did not see you here, Honorable Ndlozi, in this meeting chat. You did raise your hand. No, that's fine. Honorable Ndlozi.
Thank you kindly, Chairperson. May I begin basically with, because of this opportunity, and this I think ought to, you will guide me, Chairperson, but before I get into the presentations, I think we as a committee, and in fact, indeed, as a whole Parliament, have to take exception to the Chief Justice's comments in relation to Palestine and Israel. And I want to make a request, Chairperson, of that consideration, that as a committee of justice, which exercises all forms of oversight, express our exception. The Chief Justice ought to know that Israel is in violation of many international laws.
Chairperson, point of order, please. Point of order.
Who's speaking?
Steve Swarter, Chair. I have a point of order. I believe Dr. Ndlozi is casting aspersions on the Chief Justice. He knows the rules do not permit aspersions to be cast on a person who is appointed by Parliament, and this is not relevant to today's discussion, and I would ask you to rule on it, that we get on with the business of the day. Thank you, Chair.
Point of order, Chairperson.
I think, okay, let me allow the point of order, Honorable Mfuke.
Chair, I think because Honorable Ndlozi has not been in this committee for some time, I think we have a day with the Chief Justice, and I'll also say that let us deal with the business of the day. Thank you.
Okay, any other person on this issue before I rule?
Yeah, Chair.
Who's speaking?
Mohammed.
Honorable Mohammed.
Yeah, no, I want to concur with Honorable Swart and Mofokeng. Obviously, we would want to express ourselves very strongly on the issue, but not today. I think we have the agenda points. If there's a special need to discuss this, certainly I'm sure you will consider it. But I want to say we want to focus on the adjustment budget today. But we all have very strong views on the matter. Thanks.
Chair, it's Werner Horn.
Honorable Horn.
Yeah, no, look, I agree with colleagues. I think it is unfair of the Honourable Dr. Ndlozi to try and blindside the committee on a day which we have a very specific agenda item to, when it's his time to interrogate the presentations, to come and try and force the committee into a corner to adopt a position he wants us to adopt without the matter being properly ventilated. I propose, as other colleagues, that we stick strictly to the agenda item, and if Dr. Ndlozi wants the committee to deal with the issue, he can obviously write to you as chair so that a meeting with that on the agenda can be scheduled. Thank you.
Chair, it's Glynis.
Honorable Breitenbach.
Thank you. I support the submission of Honorable Horn and other members.
Thank you very much. Honorable members.
Chair, I'm also adding my voice there. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Maseko Jele.
I was saying I'm adding my voice in support of our members.
Okay. Now, honorable members, I think what Honorable Ndlozi was raising is that a consideration be made. And I would advise that his party is within its right to make a motion in Parliament for that issue to be debated. But I don't think that by merely requesting that a matter be discussed, you are casting aspersions on anyone. But however, I do think that this meeting called in terms of the money bills amendment procedures has to deal with the budget supplementary budget. However, I think it is well in order for a party to have a motion that can be debated in Parliament, or to propose that in the next meeting of a committee or any other time this matter be discussed. To that extent, I don't think that he is out of order. In fact, he is casting aspersions, but to the extent of relevance.
Chair,
You are
you've
muted.
muted your mic. Chair, you've muted your mic.
Okay. So must I start from the beginning? Sorry, can I start from the beginning?
Relevance.
Just the last bit, Chair.
Oh, yes. I'm saying that in terms of relevance for today's discussions, I think my ruling is that we should stick to the supplementary budget. But if the party feels strong that the matter be discussed in the House or any other time by the committee, I think necessary arrangements should be made. But in terms of casting aspersions, because he was just saying that he thinks that we should discuss this matter. So I would think that in terms of relevance to the matters of today, I think that we should focus on the supplementary budget.
Thanks, Chair. I welcome the ruling. It's indeed very fair. And I would like to emphasize that I do think that there must be a consideration of those comments by the Chief Justice. No one is above the law. And I will subject myself to the fact that it be deferred to a relevant time. That is okay. Coming to the discussions of today, the opening comments of the Department of Justice speak to the general principles and of the budget. The conceptual term that consistently comes up is like budget cuts, and I think it's important to indicate that it's a generally misguided approach that Treasury has taken, because austerity measures have never resulted in any economic development and growth anywhere in the world. And these cuts are not necessary at all. And I do think that they will result in many instances across the country, and indeed with the department's work to a negative impact on service delivery. So that's the first thing. The second thing relates to the comments that relate to the backlog of cases. I think it's unfair, really, and I know the department will comment on this. It's unfair, really, to blame the regulations in relation to COVID-19, which were necessary. It was necessary for the country to stop people from gathering, whether it be at the beach, or any other place, or enjoying any leisure. Those level lockdown 5 was necessary, and people that violated or engaged in any violations of these regulations must be held accountable. What we should be asking is more resource and for those prosecutions to take place, and to take place speedily. And we must be ready, because we are going to be dealing with COVID-19 for some time. And therefore, we've got to project indeed that there's going to be violations that have to be dealt with, and have to be dealt with speedily. So the resolution is not to criticize the regulations, but is to make a comment about the urgent need and the consistent need that government ought to deploy resources, so that our fight for COVID-19 is also articulated at the level of fighting those who are undermining the regulations, those who are undermining the fight against the spread of coronavirus. So that's the other thing. And then, even in the budget, in the budget that's presented by the Minister of Finance, there was a glaring absence of gender-based violence. The President, on the 17th of June, made a commitment of 1.6 billion that will be dedicated to the fight on gender-based violence. Where is this 1.6 billion? Particularly the promise that it will come to the prosecutorial capacity in relation to these cases, in relation to the speedy resolution of gender-based violence cases. There was a commitment on 17 June. It's now nowhere. I mean, even now we are talking about cuts. You shouldn't be expecting the reduction from 400 to 200 as the NPA has indicated. You should be expecting more, because there was a commitment of 1.6 billion that is going to be prioritized to fight gender-based violence, in which prosecutors are mentioned explicitly in the speech of the president. So that's maybe it's the question either to the deputy minister. I understand is here. It would have been more relevant to be dealt with as well by the minister. But we've got to ask the question: what happened to that promise? But also, in all the articulations by both the NPA and the department, there is very little mention of a fight that has to be put. What are you guys going to do explicitly in this financial year to respond not only to gender-based violence, but to the killing of children that is mounting? I mean, in the last few weeks, we've seen that it's a real issue in relation to the rest of us have said that, but there's no strategic commitment. I would like them to speak pragmatically around that question. Except, you know, the laws that are going to be amended and so on and so forth. And then the last set of comments, Honorable Chairperson, I saw in the budget there, they say they saved money, the department that is, on accommodation and travels. Can they give a figure? How much did you spend there? How much you said you saved money? How much did you save, so that we know it's this figure and this is what it's going to be doing? You just mentioned it in passing. And then the acting DG indicated that the state capture inquiry will be getting an additional 42 million. But can you indicate how much has been spent up to this point by the Commission of Inquiry? How much has been spent at this stage, now that we are giving them an additional? It's additional to what? And then he also indicated that the Commission has to wrap up its work so that the NPA can take over and prosecute. It's not clear whether this is the view of the acting DG, or they've told the Commission, or if it is the entire government's view. Can he please clarify that as well? And then finally, Chairperson, I really think that it's just the final re-emphasis on austerity will lead us nowhere. These budget cuts are misinformed, and they will affect service delivery, and they will never lead to any growth or economic development. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Ndlozi. I think I have two questions. One, I would start where Honorable Ndlozi ended with regard to the Zondo Commission, whether the department tried to establish as to what are the cost drivers in that commission. And is there any fat that was supposed to have been cut? Because if you look at, everybody is tightening his or her belt. We can't be funding an institution without transparency as to what are the cost drivers that is driving the cost to be high in that institution. My second question is this issue of case lines. I understand that they are in Gauteng. Currently, they are working fairly well in Gauteng. When are they going to be rolled out to other provinces? Those are my two questions. Over to you, Department and NPA. If Minister wants to start, maybe you should start, Deputy Minister.
Chair, I'll rather come at the end, please. Thanks.
No, that's fine. Acting Teacher.
Thanks, honourable members, Chair and honourable members and Deputy Minister. As I'll try to cover those questions. I've got comments and replies, and my team, which are on the participation list, who are in the meeting, will also add in where I've missed whatever. And Chair, although I am giving all the views, whatever, this is a joint effort which obviously comes from the EXCO as collective and the management as a whole. I welcome the comments and questions, and I think, Chair, they basically amplify and embellish the viewpoint, and we'll take them forward in terms of how we're going to deal with aspects. Now, Chair, I'll start with the Honourable Bittenbach. Yes, we agree that IJS has not yielded what delivered went to us many years ago following the National Crime Prevention Strategy of 1996, and I think that recognition has now come to the fore, and there are efforts, different already efforts which have been put forward to revive and to relaunch that program, and I think Minister is going to Cabinet at the end of July this year. The JCPS ministers are meeting next on the 16th to look at that revamped program, and I think there will be an opportunity to feed into Parliament what are the kind of changes in this space, and also acknowledging some of the happenings which we need to sustain from the past 20 years, and some of the things we need to dump because they've not worked out, and some of the issues we need to build on. So IJS has come to the forefront due to COVID-19, and I think we welcome the efforts. So if it was not done in 20 years, and if it cannot be done under COVID-19 legacy project, then it's not worth it to be funded by the taxpayers' money. So, and I think that's the approach we're coming to, and we are hopeful that now it will kind of move forward in terms of those identified areas around maintenance, around the case backlogs and all those matters, virtual courts, applications, motion, which I'll come to later on, etc. The case backlog program, Chair, is slowly getting off the ground, and I think Minister did say when he answered the portfolio committee that the greatest effort and endeavor has been to bring the judiciary on board in terms of that, because in terms of our legal framework, the case management responsibility lies to the judiciary, with basically the NPA, legal aid, and all the supporting structures participate in that process. And so we needed to make sure that it's been done from the perspective. From the side of the department NPA, the structure has been put in place. We are talking, and we've put that program is already fine-tuned in terms of those extra hours, and we are making sure that even in terms of the budget cuts, we are not going to cut at the core. So when we say court services cuts, we are saying court services as a branch, not necessarily the courts themselves. So within the court services, I think we put it very clearly, eloquently. Within court services, there are certain layers of operations and management. So we are targeting on those areas where there's less impact on the courts. But we start from the bottom-up approach. We sustain business continuity at the courts and safeguard those courts and make sure that we basically interfere with those areas which are are not critical to sustaining our business processes. And part of it, I can just say, around the cashless situation. In every big court, we have what we call cash halls. The cash halls functionality is mainly exchanging cash for bail, court maintenance, whatever, etc. Now we say if we are moving towards a cashless system, and we are going to move away from the guidance from the cash in transit companies that transport monies. Already those savings should basically be channeled towards sustaining what is needed in the courtroom. So we're moving people from cash hall so that you move the people into a courtroom. So we're not, and that kind of prioritization will also be taken into account in terms of that. And on the whole, yes, it's where I think COVID-19 have shown the opportunity to basically move forward with the need to create a more reliable and credible virtual platform for our services. And I said, this is the only opportunity where the fourth industrial revolution must really come to the center and help not only South Africa, but the world. Because I think it has shown that the IT and the digital modernization process is very central to this arrangement. Building environment, building consent, yes, I must say, and this also answers the question to Honorable Mohammed. Our projected savings on the infrastructure budget is informed by what DPW and I have committed to spend in this financial year. We went back to them. We're engaging with them. They've told us that they will, in light of one, COVID-19, and two, the reality that the building industry it's on its knees. It's part of that business sectors which need basically to be revived. They project an expenditure of 378 million, which means of the 853 million plus that we have put, 600 and plus that have been put for the budget for the capital infrastructure. 50% will be spent by public works in real terms. Now we say, instead of keeping that money idling, whilst we already know upfront that they are going to spend on that, let's channel that money to other areas of better use. Now, I could not. One of the plan under the COVID-19 plan is that on the big sites, and we have learned that from police, on the big costs like your Johannesburg and eThekwini costs, if the police came with a solution there, that once the police station get crimes, whatever, they still find the police on site, not in the building. There's a laptop there, somebody's taking measures, and there's communication so that police are going to be sent out. We are saying in those busy courts, whatever, we cannot close them. We must come with alternative measures to sustain those businesses. And part of the money we've put around from the infrastructure will be channeled towards those kind of or shift in businesses, because you can't chase, and I've said, I've given this as a minute to colleagues today, if you close Alexandra Court, you can't send those people to because the issue of transport, the issue of jurisdiction, the issue of what becomes complex. It's better to find an alternative measure where those who are able to come, you communicate those that they must come on other days. Those who are already there must be able to be assisted, and you can make makeshift arrangements so that the sustainable evidence is lesser. And then Honorable Swap, yes, I've talked about case, but the judiciary is slowly coming on board, and I think we have emphasized to the regional conference the need to convene the coordinating structure, the case flow management structure, so that we can get all the stakeholders to start actual implementation of the plan. From our side, we have started measures to put in place the priority role. Clerks have drawing cases which ought to have been dealt with during the lockdowns, and are putting them in the arranged manner for them to be enrolled by the judicial officer as well as the NPA and all the stakeholders. So the assistance that we need to provide is already in place. And what we're also saying is that to extend that there will be a need for extra hours, to extend there's a need for extra calls, whatever, there will, or virtual equipment to manage some of the processes, will then be able to use part of this money which have been put aside from the COVID-19 to do with that, etc. I've talked about cash wars and the virtual platforms, and the zero budgeting is also linked to that process, that new areas that we need to get spending for will then find an opportunity to be prioritized as part of this process. Honorable Mohammed, we are very thankful to that suggestion. I think you also come input from an experience that you have had from having managed our space in the Western Cape. Yes, top management is very essential to give direction. Production at the lower level is very essential to provide service delivery. We have to minimize the middle management where we have to find an opportunity that we can still do what we do with less hands. Not that we need to abolish it, and that process is basically taken forward. And I think we are also taking that clue in terms of how we can pull together resources in terms of decontamination across the cluster. The National Commission have said to me they've already started to develop, to produce chemicals in their labs so that they can even obviate the cost that they are paying in terms of these processes. And I've said to him, if that's going to be the best way to go, let's also see how we can assist the security cluster as a whole because we can't promise government. Government is too big to basically be supported by the labs of the police. But if they can assist the courts and correctional centers, it will help save quite a lot of money. And that shows the whole kind of joint working with the colleagues, etc. Honorable Masego Chele, yes, the review on the apartheid legislation is at the center. Has not been taken out of the reprioritized APPs that will be that were finalized yesterday. Similar with the issue of the single justice system, those will be sustained because they are very key to a transformation process that needs to be still sustained as we move forward, etc. And you'll be excited to learn after Minister have got to cabinet that's the very same approach we are taking, that of creating some teams that should start working on the specifics. Because I think the capacity challenges that are brought by COVID-19, but also by government vacancy rate, whatever, clearly point that you need more in certain areas, and we need to take a different approach to put those teams together. So there will be a team that will basically which is being established to focus on the review and amendment and repeal of the Criminal Procedure Act of 1977, as well as many other legislation which are central to fighting corruption and gender-based violence. That include the whole the prevention of organized crimes at the PECA, and I think all those are in space to be attended to. The masters, I met with them in terms of the recovery of the lost data. Chair, every crisis to us we take as an opportunity. There was a crisis on Mojapay on the 4th of May, which I apologize to the portfolio committee. And I've said to colleagues, let's give us the opportunity to deal with matters differently. We have resuscitated the whole issue of payment is already underway. There's a plan in place, but we're also looking forward in terms of making sure that we don't get recurrence of this. And part of the process is that we are looking into generating a different business processes of payment, of maintenance. And part of what I was saying in terms of virtual application systems is part of the system. Now, in the masters, the 45,000 files were not lost by justice. They were lost by DocuFile. We pay DocuFile 15 million a year to keep our documents. They lose them, they get damaged by hail, etc. Now they don't even have a clear recovery plan on the damaged file. What we have put in place said, because we know the people in respect of who the trust have been opened, we don't have the files. There's a process underway which is calling back all the persons who are the beneficiaries or who are the parties to all those matters to the master's office. There's an original document kept by the parties themselves, and we are using the parties as part of regenerating those documents which have lost, including the banks, including the lawyers. So all the documents in the master's office are kept in different spaces, and I think there's a project underway to retrieve those documents. It takes time, but what they've shown us that we've placed reliance on somebody else to manage our information. So digitization is becoming very central a project in this space. We are moving away from the outsourced model. I've said instead of paying somebody to manage the system. Let's get a digitization program that enable us to save the storage for ourselves. As external court hours, I've dealt with that. Cashless courts, I've dealt with that. And I think I'm going to ask Mr. Mtem to speak to. No, that slide was with regard to the NPA in terms of the court services process violation. And then there was a question on the buildings and the Honorable Mufokeng. Yes, Mamelodi Court is a challenge, and so is other challenges. We have learned from this process. And here's the good thing which is coming as part of the transformation of the legal systems, also the office of the on all contracts which DPW and I have entered into. Have not been very strong in terms of the escape process when things start hitting the snake. As a result, once a project is up to 80% like Port Shepstone, and then you experience challenges with you have to rely on the processes of business and all those elements. The money which should be channeled towards completing the project gets used to be spent by business practitioners, by lawyers and all those processes, whilst the buildings stand still and the matters are being fought in court, the unions are coming in, they're opposing the business plan processes, whatever. Now, we said to SG and we said to Public Works, let's, at the same time that we're engaging the contractor to build this infrastructure, let's also anticipate that this is the escape clause. If this measure an unexpected process comes to hit us, we shall be able to have the right to get out of the contract, so that those processes can go on the sideline to help save big 5 companies.
Sorry. Hello. Can honorable members still hear Advocate Skosana? Because I'm struggling. Maybe I'm the only one.
No, you're not the only one, Chair.
No, Chair, my interpreter can also.
Yeah, there's a problem.
Yeah, it is really bad. We can't hear you at all on the Advocate Skosana.
My apologies, Chair. I don't know up to what space did you hear me, so I can round off the remainder of the items. If I can just get an indication, Honorable Chair and member.
Well, at some point I was convinced that it is my gadget, so I think I heard half of what you were saying. I was convinced that it was my gadget, but that is why I asked other honourable members. The bigger part of your presentation was not audible on my side.
Oh, I apologize. Am I not audible?
Hello?
Am I audible now, Chair?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Let me summarize. Obviously, those areas which are not covered, I'm sure honourable members will basically revert to us in terms of that. Let me reiterate the issue of the infrastructure. Firstly, on the issue of the master's recovery plan, I indicated that most of the documents which were lost or damaged are those documents which were damaged at the off-site storage by DocuFile, and we've put in place mechanisms to recover those documents, and because we've got the names and the database of those parties, and also the persons who are appointed by the masters, there's a communication with them to come forward to bring those documents. Basically, they've taught us a lesson that we need to move with speed in the digitization of the master services, so that we are not going to rely on the external stakeholders to manage those files for us. Then the next point I was at was the building environment. I did indicate that, and it was respond to Honorable Mufokeng that yes, Mamelodi Court has basically come to a standstill, and it's not because of budget problems, but it's because of the contractual challenges with DPW and I. And what we have then engaged, and the solution we've proposed to DPW is that any contract which has been concluded need to have an escape clause, so that once the contractor is unable to complete the work, we must be able to opt out of that contract, so that DPW can get any other person to complete that project. And those challenges are confronting not only justice, but all other departments. Our Port Shepstone Court remains at 89. It's even deteriorating because of the non-completion. So, and I think we're working the process, and the acting Solicitor General is assisting in developing a framework that should allow us to get an escape clause, so that projects on the infrastructure can basically move forward the steps. And now the next one was basically that the extended item, extended court hours. We say that that's the process we should manage jointly with the NPA and the judiciary, whatever. From our side, we are making sure that there always be support structure, support system in place, including from a budget perspective. If there's a need to facilitate overtime, whatever, for extra hours, whatever, let's do that, etc. But we are mindful that obviously we have the adequate capacity from the judiciary and the NPA to sustain those additional hours. On the state, I did talk about the state capture. Chair, and also to respond to Honorable Ndlozi, what I was saying around the state capture, I was reiterating what the High Court said when they granted the extension until the end of March. They said that it is in the interest of South Africans and the population that process is crazy, that we found it necessary.
So
we can't hear
Advocate Kosana. Advocate Kosana.
Honorable Chair.
You were saying that process, and then after that we could not hear you. You said the court was saying that it was important that process, and then we could not hear you after that.
Okay. I was saying that in response to Honorable Ndlozi and other honorable members, the court, it is the court which stated that it is important that the State Capture Commission finalize the investigation process. And what justice is doing, we are giving that funding to the commission in order to realize that objective, which is part of the court order. That's the point I wanted to clarify. It's not a standby justice. We are responding to what the court judgment, that we need to make sure that the commission is put in a position to complete and wrap up its work, and that is what's guiding us. And I think I've asked Mr. Mthembu to talk to exactly how much have we paid to date in terms of the financial year. We will get from the Secretary of the State Capture Commission how much has been spent. But the part which has been exhausted is the investigation component. And Chair, your question was that what are the cost drivers in the state?
We can't hear. We can't hear you.
One, they use the ID.
We can't hear you, Advocate Kosana. You're saying that what are the cost drivers? After that, we could not hear you.
The cost drivers, Honorable Chair, are the investigation component and the legal component. There's a team of investigators. They are using expensive equipment to investigate, and they spend about 18 million per month on investigations, both in terms of the persons and the IT. And then the second cost driver is the legal team, which is basically manageable because members of the legal team, they get put in intervals so that they can deal with specific aspects of the evidence. But I've said that where the money has run dry is in the investigation sector, and the 42 million being asked is to sustain the investigations. Was it Honorable Chair?
Hello?
Hi, Chair.
Hello,
am
yes.
I audible now? Yes. So I'm about to complete the responses. I was just saying that I've indicated the expenditure, the cost drivers, the investigation mainly, and the other question by Honorable Zoso was where is the 1.6 billion, which was earmarked for the gender-based violence, and wanted to indicate that that 1.6 billion is a total amount earmarked for gender-based violence across all government departments. And in that space, we have our own share that have been earmarked as part of that. And that money continue to be used for that purpose of gender-based violence. We cannot use for it any other purpose. That's why it was earmarked across departments, so that basically assists in fighting the scourge of gender-based violence. And Mr. Mthembu will basically give the is the actual cost that we have put to allow Mr. Mthembu to complete or the rest of the question I could not cover. In the meantime, I hope I've been audible on the last point, 2 points raised.
Thank you, Acting DG. Chair,
let's hope. Hello? Yes. Let's hope you're not using the same equipment because it's giving us problems.
Unfortunately, Chair, we are sitting in the same boardroom with Advocate Kosana in the same equipment, but I hope I'm audible.
Yeah, you're audible for now.
Okay, Chair, with regards to the state capture spending to date, 700 million has been spent to date with regard to the state capture spending since its beginning. Now, with regard to our contribution to the gender-based violence, for this current financial year, the department has put aside 9.2 million to support gender-based violence initiative. But those are the special allocations, but you'll understand that naturally our work as justice does contribute to the gender-based violence. The DG has already covered the issue of zero-based costing, but we are also working closely with Treasury to formulate a model that will also assist us to implement the zero-based costing. But the approach is new projects, but
Hello?
Thanks, Chair. I'm done with my contribution.
Can you repeat the last part?
No, I was saying with regards to zero-based costing, we are working closely with Treasury to formulate a model that will assist us to conduct such exercise, and we are working closely to identify our programs that is part of zero costing over and above the new projects that we'll be implementing, as the acting DG has alluded. Thank you. Chair?
Thanks, Honorable Chair. It's again J. Biskosana. I think there was last question which you asked, Chair, which was not answered, is the online case, the case online, which is being piloted in Gauteng and partly Western Cape. Is the project under the Office of the Chief Justice and is basically piloted by the Deputy Chief, by the Judge JP Mlambo. From our side, we've basically committed to support that project from the budget perspective of the IJS, but I think they're working on a process to roll it out in more courts. It's just being piloted for now so that they can basically affect the system.
Kosana, the pilot was for how long?
were advised, Chair, that the pilot started to gather ground from March, etc. And I'm advised that pilot will run, and it's put to run until the end of this year, and there will be an opportunity to build in as they move on. And I think the expansion of the pilot is also dependent on the, I'm advised, is dependent on the lockdown processes, whatever is dependent whether there's going to be certain areas which are going to be coming down to level 2 or so, because I think it's JP Mlambo who undertakes training in the various provinces or so. But we can establish the exact facts in terms of that. From our side, we have put aside the budget support for that initiative. Honorable Chair.
Okay, thank you, sir. Are you done, Advocate Kosana? Advocate Kosana, are you done?
Yes, Chair, except that because I apologize that the larger part of the response were not captured, unless if there's pointers which areas I could repeat, I will be able to do so, Chair. And once more, I apologize for the system, and I just hope that it will not what will be happening in the courts. People will still not get acquitted or convicted because the system fails them at the end of the day. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Advocate Patoi.
Honorable Chair, honorable members, thank you very much. I will first call upon Advocate Pierre Smith, who is the Acting Special Director in the Sexual Offences and Community Affairs Unit, to address the issues relating to SGBV and the Tutuzela care centres. Yeah.
Thank you, NDPP, and good morning, Honourable Chair and Honourable members. I will respond to the questions in relation to gender-based violence for the National Prosecuting Authority. First, I'm going to talk about the question in relation to the AVRs for the Tutuzela care centres. Firstly, there aren't any AVRs at the TCCs. What we are looking at with the Integrated Justice System and DoJ is a process called Court Audio Visual Solutions, which ultimately will benefit the victims of these offences that reported at TCCs to deliver their testimony from the TCCs linked to any court in the country, and it will also assist expert witnesses in the same regard as well. That will be a phased-in process, and ultimately the goal is to have all the sites, of which there are currently 55, to be included in this process. Secondly, there aren't any budget cuts in relation to, from the NPA in relation to gender-based violence or the TCCs or any other project in relation to this specialized field of expertise. In relation to what I should also add, in fact, for the TCCs, as honourable members will know, there's a CARA allocation that we received, and we're well on track to implement that process for the establishment of 6 additional TCCs, which is supposed to be done in this MTF period. The goal is to have 5 of them established by the end of March 2021, obviously pending lockdown challenges. Secondly, we're also in a process of advertising, which we did, and in the process of filling posts at the current 55 TCCs where there are vacancies, but also incorporated the 6 sites, new sites that we want to roll out. So that will be positions at the sites for victim assistant officers, site coordinators, and your specialists as case managers, which is on a state advocate level. GBV is a priority matter in the NPA and will stay as a priority matter. It's also included in the NPA APP, as it is in the NPS annual performance plan, and it is rolled out and implemented by the DPPs in the different divisions as well. Stakeholder management in this regard is a crucial focus area for us, where we collectively work towards dealing with initiatives and projects and addressing the plague of gender-based violence. In relation to vulnerable groups, I just wanted to emphasize, as honourable members will know, that as part of the NPA focus, the victim-centric services, all vulnerable groups are resorting under that, which includes children. So Children is for us a focus area in line with that specific project. Just for interest's sake, honourable members will possibly recall that I've mentioned it in the past, that at our TCCs, we have a percentage of between 55 to 57% on average in relation to matters reported with children as victims. Therefore, it is inevitably a focus area for us in that regard as well. In relation to our training courses also for prosecutors, I just wanted to add this on because I think it's crucial that honourable members have an understanding why it is such a crucial focus area for us. We've included in our social context awareness sensitivity training a specific curriculum on how to deal with children as victims as well when they are to testify in a court environment as well. So to have that additional expertise as well. I just need to note the following, that obviously lockdown had its own challenges, as honourable members heard, in relation to backlogs, clearly in this regard as well. But we've also experienced for the months of April and May, and if you calculate that together, a 48.7% decrease in the number of matters reported at TCCs in comparison to the previous financial year. Now, obviously, the assumption is that would be due to the movability of people that were impacted, and therefore it was more challenging for them to report those matters at TCC. Lastly, in our public awareness campaigns, children in relation to any other person that falls within the vulnerable group is a crucial focus area for us to focus on that specifically when we do community radio talk shows or any other form of public awareness, to focus on the essence on how we deal collectively with our other stakeholders in relation to children as victims of these atrocities, which will include also the killing, the unfortunate killing of children, which is a huge concern for us at the present stage. So in a nutshell there is no budget cut in relation to this focus. In fact, we're working towards an increased focus area also in relation to this regard with our CARA funding. And also if there's going to be a saving, we look at possibilities of where we can assist the DPPs in relation to specific focus areas and appointments, if possible, additional to the establishment to assist in relation to sexual offences specifically, which will ultimately also then assist with backlog courts. Thank you, Honourable Chairperson and NDPP. That's my response in that regard. I hope I've answered all the questions in that regard. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Advocate Smith. If I may proceed, Honourable Chair, just to just to highlight an issue mentioned and the question raised by Honourable Nkosi. I think it is really, you know, as a reactive part of law enforcement, the killing of children, as Advocate Smith has explained, is a focus area. But when we have a society where we kill children, it is something that we as a reactive part of it can't really address. The police will investigate. It is a focus area. We will prosecute. People will be sent to prison. But what is it in the moral fiber of our country that results in us killing children? So that is, you know, something that we have to look at from a preventative aspect and have strategies to really deal with that issue. But it is very, very concerning, I agree. On the issue, Chair, of backlogs that was raised by a number of honourable members, as you heard from the acting DG, you know, there are processes in place to sign off on a plan that will address the issue of the increased impact negatively on the backlogs that were already there before COVID-19. So there was just a meeting yesterday when this was further discussed jointly with the various role players. The NPA is playing its role in that forum to address this. And of course, but honourable members and chair, the backlog problem has got to be seen in the context of a much greater efficiency of the criminal justice system problem. And certainly the impact of COVID-19 has exacerbated the issue of backlogs in the court that's trying to be addressed, and the various stakeholders are sitting around the table to look at various things that ADG has talked about: additional hours, court sitting outside of normal hours, etc. But honourable members, this is a greater criminal justice system problem and challenge, and I really think that we need to address it in that greater context. Backlogs have always been a problem, and I've said this before. Prior to me leaving the country 10 years ago, there was a backlog project then to address this issue, and it was a problem a year ago. It's just been exacerbated now. So I think and the judiciary plays a very, very important role together with us as stakeholders in this. So the issue of efficiency of the criminal justice system, which the judiciary is also leading in some instances at various fora, is something we really collectively need to look at in terms of how we can address this, because this is an age-old problem that the criminal justice system really has to get right. And hopefully, as the acting DG says, in every crisis there's an opportunity. So hopefully this crisis is going to help us deal with this, and it will hopefully be one of those legacy issues where we're able to address the broader inefficiencies in the criminal justice system to ensure better efficiency and addressing the backlogs in the process. Chair, the issue of the aspirant prosecutor program was raised. I want to assure honourable members that have raised this issue that although we initially thought we would need to reduce the amount by almost 50%, I'm given to understand that it's going to be a lot less than that. And we're actually hoping that we might be able to still recruit close to the full amount, if not all, because we do recognize the importance of the aspirant prosecutor program in bringing in the fresh, new capacity at the entry level into the NPA. And to address the issue specifically on this raised by Honorable Mohammed about external funding, we were certainly last year, because as you said, it is a sort of training empowerment issue. And we were last year looking at those options, but because we got the increase in the budget, we were able to address that. So for now, the NPA is able to deal with that issue within its budget. The issue of the civil recovery issues that was raised by Honorable Swartz, and I'm not sure if any other members raised this. Certainly, the strategy to deal with corruption is primarily two-pronged, and one is holding accountable those that have plundered our state resources, and also I must not forget the private sector corruption, but also to bring back the money, and that is what the country needs. And so there are various ways in which, both by way of civil recovery, as well as the asset forfeiture processes which reside within the NPA. I know that the Special Investigation Unit under Advocate Mutibi, with whom we are working very, very closely in various contexts, in particular in the anti-corruption space, that they are primarily dealing with civil recovery issues. And yes, you're correct. The commencement of the work of the Special Tribunal is something that is a tool, a very important tool in this particular fight. I should say that we are in the asset recovery space, asset forfeiture and recovery space. We have also been liaising with Advocate Mutibi to look at how we could possibly even use the tribunal for the asset forfeiture processes that relate to SIU investigations. So we are exploring that. I should say, and actually warn, I'm not sure if that's the right word, honorable members, that the asset forfeiture processes in recent times did not escape the general negative impact that law enforcement has seen in recent times, and the asset forfeiture figures are still extremely disappointing, and it talks to various issues, predominantly a resource capacity, and I think strategic leadership has been lacking in that space. And so I'm very, very pleased that with the fact that we have Advocate Omar Rabaji online as the new Deputy National Director of Public Prosecutions. She only started on the 1st of June, but certainly addressing all of the lack of strategic direction, as well as capacitation within the AFU, which did not progress as fast as we would like to, but we are now, as you heard from Hanika van Zyl, that we put together a recruitment task team, and they are reporting every week. They will be reporting every week in terms of the progress we're making on recruitment, particularly in key areas like asset forfeiture and the specialized commercial crime courts. And so I'm certainly hopeful that if not in the Q1 report, which is due in 3 weeks' time, certainly in the coming reports that we will be accounting to Parliament and the people, there will be an upward trend that one is going to start seeing in this space. We are working very, very closely. The issue of artificial intelligence and IT and money flows was also raised. I mean, this is crucial in fighting corruption. Very often you're not going to get people coming together to say, we were in a meeting where we discussed that this is how we're going to corrupt the government. You look at money flows. And so the efforts of the Financial Intelligence Center under Advocate Tori Kanyile, with whom we are also working very, very closely, and the Asset Forfeiture Unit, Advocate Rabaji and Advocate Kanyile are also putting a project together where we can work very, very quickly and speedily, where the Financial Intelligence Center sees suspicious transactions. The AFU is going to be on board to work very, very quickly to be able to address and freeze funds, as we recently demonstrated with certain COVID-related activities. Particularly the UIF freezing was the result of very, very close cooperation between the Financial Intelligence Center as well as the Asset Forfeiture Unit of the National Prosecuting Authority. So that is hugely important. And since I'm dealing with corruption-related issues, I think I will talk to another question that was raised by Advocate Masuku Jele relating to COVID-19. The expectations around dealing with corruption in that space. The UIF again was a good example of very quick action. I want to share I think there was a public communication about this, but to remind members perhaps that the Fusion Center has been established at the nationally, where the key entities in fighting corruption, and this at the moment has its focus on COVID-related corruption. And all the various entities like the Financial Intelligence Center, this is intelligence-driven, the DPCI, as well as the detectives of the SAPS, the SIU, SARS, the Auditor General's Office, and ourselves, to name some of the key entities, are have been co-located at the national level and are working very, very closely with the various regional structures, the DPP's office predominantly, to actually, in order that there is a swift and an immediate reaction to COVID-related corruption matters. And so that this is an important intervention, and we're hoping that the results that we see from this model will also help us to deal better with more broader corruption-related issues in South Africa. And that is also would perhaps inform how we deal with things at the ACTT, which is the Anti-Corruption Task Team, which deals with corruption outside of, generally corruption outside the investigating directorate and outside of COVID-related corruption, which is dealt with in the Fusion Center. So the issue of the witness fees was raised. This is a matter that requires a lot of engagement with. Honorable Mohammed raised this with the Department of Justice and with the National Prosecuting Authority. It is not a simple matter. I mean, firstly, the Department of Justice has been actually set up to deal with this from an administrative point of view, and of course, there's also budgetary implications. But in addition to that, we have to look at it from a policy perspective, and witnesses are, one can say, not really NPA witnesses. They are witnesses for justice. They represent complainants and victims, and so it's the justice system that needs to support witnesses. But also, we need to think about a policy issue that, will we be creating the impression that the National Prosecuting Authority is paying witnesses, and there may be issues of conflict of interest, and so this is not a simple issue, and it requires requires engagement and discussion between the department as well as the NPA, so that we're able to address this in a way that enhances efficiency, but that also does not compromise the witness fee system. The issue of well, I should actually touch on, before I sort of, sorry about this, honorable members, but when in the corruption space, maybe I should also touch on the issue of the issues that have been raised around resources and the Zondo Commission. Honorable members have it's been laid bare the amount that it costs the Zondo Commission to be dealing with state capture in the context of their mandate. One can only imagine what is going to cost law enforcement, as well as the NPA, the investigating directorate that's been set up, in terms of skills and capacity to properly address the avalanche, one should say, of work that's going to come from the Zondo. And we're also talking about other commissions of inquiry. So this is a very, very important issue. At the moment, the investigating directorate, relying on the secondment model in the NPA Act, it's not the best model, and so the capacitation, besides the resources, has been a serious challenge, and we are engaged in discussions with. Someone's not muted.
Sorry, Advocate Batoy. I think somebody, the Secretariat, is messing up our meeting. Continue.
Thank you,
please.
Chair. So this is a really important issue because, when one looks at the amount of money that has cost the Zondo Commission, we really have to think about what the impact is going to be on the investigating directorate in being able to take forward, the necessary investigations and prosecutions in order to hold those accountable. So, we have been engaged with, as I was saying, with the National Commissioner of the Police to look at how we could better utilize the secondment model. And we've just had conversations earlier this week on that issue. But one has to also look at, the question was asked about the cost drivers in the Zondo Commission, and the acting DG indicated that these cost drivers have been the legal services, the investigative services, and the IT. And so we have also been engaging with the Zondo Commission in terms of being able to take over their IT systems and structures and capabilities, so that this can be moved to law enforcement broadly, as well as the directorate, to be able to use this capability that they have. And so, that is an important part of the conversation, and we would certainly appreciate the support of the committee, because there may well be various entities that want to get access well, access is one thing, but to be able to take over this capability. But I think the importance of law enforcement and the directorate being able to get that capability is going to be huge in terms of us being able to move forward with investigating and prosecuting people that were responsible for large-scale corruption. The issue of the legal, investigative and legal services, which the ADG talked about, certainly within the NPA and in public service, I think we cannot match the salaries that were paid by the Zondo Commission. And so that is another challenge, because if we want to get the capability and the skills of people that are working in the Zondo Commission at the moment, either as investigators or legal people, we have to look at how do we actually, ensure that we can have those skills available to us, but not at that cost, which is simply not sustainable within the public service. And so, these are important. We are having conversations with the Zondo Commission. I know that the acting DG is also aware that we are looking to set up meetings in the next week or so with the Secretary of the Zondo Commission, with other relevant staff members from the entities to really look at how we could make sure that this skill and capability is available to us as we move forward. Chair, the issue of the I'm just checking to see that I have not left out any questions. I know that the DM will deal with the issue related to the admissions of, the convictions for less serious offences during COVID-related offences. The issue of civil recovery, I think I've touched on that. And certainly we are looking at that together with the SIU primarily. On the issue of the, I think we were asked about the set and time matter. All I'll say at this stage is that there are representations in the NPA and that we are considering those. And I think, Chair, unless you will remind me, I think I have covered all of the questions. If our Honourable DM doesn't cover any of the issues, I'm happy to be reminded that we've missed any. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've been advised, members can also further advise if that is true, that the House is not sitting at 2, it's sitting at 3, which gives us a bit of time. If that is the case, we will not be under pressure. Maybe after the DM has answered the questions, members who feel that their questions have not been answered will raise their hands. Honourable DM.
Chair, thanks. Look, the main one.
Honourable Chair, sorry, Honourable DM. The House does start at 3, not at 2. Just wanted to confirm that.
Okay. No, thank you very much, Honourable Dragens.
Chair, just the issue that Honourable Mofokeng raised around acting magistrates. I mean, it was a minor issue. Attorneys who have their own practices are appointed sometimes as acting magistrates, as they are also sometimes appointed as judges. One of the conditions is that they give up their practice for that period, that they distance themselves from it. If there are cases where there's perceived conflict of interest because somebody else from that practice is appearing in their court, then that I would have thought that they should be asked to recuse themselves, and if they don't, that it be reported. So I just wanted to respond to that one like that. On the issue of the, I'm a bit, I have to say, surprised by Honourable Swat's input. We've never said we are not going to be, or we're going to stop the prosecution of COVID-related offences. What we spoke about was the issue of expungements of records for admission of guilt fines. And we said that this is something that has been, we have been working on for some time. There is a provision in the next Judicial Matters Amendment Bill that will provide that most admission of guilt fines don't attract a criminal record. That will be for future admission of guilts and for past admission of guilts. So that's the issue. It's not about stopping prosecutions. I know this can spark a big debate, but if you have a lockdown, you need to enforce it. And part of that is by creating crimes. And a crime of during the hard lockdown of not going outside, it may differ from area to area, but the law unfortunately needs to apply to everybody. So just because you live in a leafy suburb and there's nobody on the streets, doesn't give you the right to walk your dogs when everybody else is confined to a lockdown. So I just sort of wanted to raise that, but the issue, Honourable Swart, and I'm surprised that you misunderstood this, is around the criminal records for the admission of guilt fines. I think otherwise a lot has been said, and there's not much more I can add, but just to emphasize that dealing with the case backlogs is a priority. It is, though, made more difficult by the fact that the increase in COVID infections, and also that COVID, in a sense, is a moving target. I mean, the scientific evidence now seems to indicate that it is more airborne than was previously thought, and less catchy from touching things. So, which does impact on things. But at the moment, the response, if there has been an infection, the response that people expect is some kind of desanitization. Some literature is coming out now questioning whether that is actually necessary and constructive. But the effect on the courts is, if there's a COVID infection, very often that court has to shut down. Often staff who came into contact with a COVID positive person have to quarantine, sometimes for up to 14 days. And that does affect the ability of the courts to function. So it is something we're engaging with the judiciary on a regular basis. I'll be attending a meeting shortly after this one with regional court presidents, and that will be one of the issues being discussed. And then I think the last point, I think the NDPP, or Mr. Smith, Advocate Smith, covered it. I mean, gender-based violence, sexual offences, murders of femicide and murders of children are priorities, and we're trying to ensure that the system operates as optimally as possible during this difficult period. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honourable Dear. I have a follow-up question from Mr. Swart. Is there any other member who wants to make follow-up questions?
Yes, Chair.
Who's speaking?
Ndlozi.
Oh, Honourable Ndlozi. Honourable Ndlozi will follow Honourable Swart in that order. Those are the two names that I have for now.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Deputy Minister. I maybe didn't articulate myself very clearly. I was obviously referring to the issue relating to the admission of guilt fines, following Advocate Rodney de Kock previously saying that within the NPA's domain, up to 25% of the cases had been withdrawn. So obviously that is an NPA where people can make representations on the prosecution, which, should they be favorably considered, would reduce the case backlog. My question, however, related, and you kind of answered it, but whether in terms of the committee's resolution, whether you'd be able to have that bill before us before the end of July. And obviously we've got other very important legislation related to gender-based violence, but that was what I was actually asking about, was the progress with that bill dealing with the issue relating to admission of guilt fines for less serious offences? Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Swart. Honourable Jose.
Thanks, Chairperson. This is to the department. You say that you've got 9.2 million set aside for gender-based violence. A follow-up, which I'm repeating, is to do what? What is it that you will be doing with this 9.2 million? And in relation to the discussion about the money that the president set aside, I began by demonstrating that in the entire budget, as articulated by the finance minister, it was not reflected upon. Now, if you say that it is a part of the adjusted budget, how much of it came to yourselves? That is the concrete question, because in the speech, the president makes specific mention of strengthening prosecutorial capacity in relation to gender-based violence. And as you would have seen in our discussions today, that budget has experienced a cut, not even an increase. And herein lies the contradiction, in that either the president was paying a lip service and you are protecting him, or he was talking about money that was already there. It was not new, which in any way would have been misleading. Those are my two concrete follow-ups.